Welcome back with the second half of our interview with Erik Scott de Bie and the Old Mage. We do have special guest Brian Cortijo here as well, and we do hope you do enjoy. Also, before we get started, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our page for further updates. And don't forget the Fans of Ed Greenwood page, go there and like and subscribe there as well. All right, without any further ado, here is the interview with the Old Mage with Erik Scott de Bie and Brian Cortijo. Okay, Curry, you want to take this next one too?
I do, but I wanted to comment on this exchange really quick. What I find interesting about that, the beginning of the non-answer, is it is no surprise to me, I guess, at this point that, Jeff, you and Ed get along as well as you do, because in that non-descriptive, that mysterious description of only so much information was given, was, I would say, eerily similar to, Jeff, your original description when we were playing Mithranor the first time. We were in the woods, or we were about to go into the forest outside of Mithranor, and it was all just alluded to this whole idea of you don't know. All you have is rumor and supposition and legend, and the only thing really that most people would tell us about there is don't go in there. Demons and devils, people never come back. I found that really cool, the similarity between our adventure when I was, late teens, early 20s into Mithranor, and then Ed's rendition of barely answering the question but still making it interesting enough to make me want to hold on to what is he really giving away here, because there's a little information, but it's such a great descriptive of nothing. It was great. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, I can sell you nothing. Hey, if there's ever a vacancy in the White House... No,
Right.
No, first of all, I'm not eligible, not being American. And secondly, no, don't let me run anything, ever. At least I will admit that, unlike certain...
Oh my God. All right, Curry, take it away.
So this next one is a doozy. There's a lot of information here, Ed. I will piecemeal it to you, or I can give you the whole shebang-a-bang and let you run with as much or as little of it as you like. It's really up to you.
Fire away. Give me the whole shebang-a-bang.
Okay.
We're all about the whole shebang.
Here we go. So, Demzer, senior scribe at Candlekeep. Here he says, got some questions for all of our sages on Dwarven brotherhoods and cults, as briefly outlined in Dwarves Deep. Starting with, is there any past or present famous or infamous cult or brotherhood that was left out of Dwarves Deep? That's the first one.
Hey, Curry, why don't you take them just one at a time, because there's so many of them.
I know, there's a whole lot.
Okay, so the quick answer to that, let's do it one at a time. Quick answer to that is yes. There were 3 pages left out.
Okay.
Because
fair
something enough. That's long before EE supplements or anything. Page count was page count. There's no ducking it. So yeah, I would always overwrite every single Realms product because I just get rolling. And in the early days of TSR, they loved that because they would get other products out of it, like FR5 was completely chopped from Waterdeep in the north. They would just, keep going, Ed, and then they cut it in-house. So they love that. And later on...
Simply on page count. Wow, that's amazing. Not on content, but the amount of pages.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But then later on, it was like, Ed, you know how much extra work? We're doing this last second here. You're making us extra work. Because that's what it turned into for them. It became extra work, so I stopped overwriting. I was encouraged to overwrite at the beginning. Yes, okay. No.
And that was Jeff Grubb that encouraged that too, because most of the realms hadn't been touched yet, I think, right?
That's right. And they were acutely aware, and of course that was the reason they went for someone outside of the staff, is they'd spent all the company's resources in 2 years of intense work to do Dragonlance, okay? So they were looking for someone outside where they could just pick up and run something that was already largely prepared, and they were so scared of falling into the Gary Gygax trap, and that was that Gary, because he was trying to run the company, became inevitably and unavoidably, he didn't want to, but he became a bottleneck because there was only one of him and he was so busy doing all this stuff. So those of us who are older than dirt and were gamers back then remember that we waited and waited and waited for more on Greyhawk, and Castle Greyhawk in particular, which had been promised, and it only came out after Gary was gone from the company as a joke product done by others as an anthology. But we'd been waiting and waiting and waiting, and he just couldn't get to it. Well, they were so scared that I would become the same bottleneck, and they needed to build a product line, because either this whole thing was not going to be popular, in which case it could go away in a hurry, or it was going to be very popular, in which case they needed an entire product line right now, and it to never stop. So that's why the overwriting, and I was just providing stuff, and they would chop it out literally and hang on to it for another product. And it took quite a while to change that style of writing for the Realms, because we were in gear to do that forever for the first little while. Just because it was like, wow, people want this stuff. Okay, we need something else. We need something else. We need something else. So,
right,
yeah, and I loved it. Even though, I mean, I could not have kept that pace up as a human being for much longer. I really loved those years. Those were the halcyon days.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Hey, Ed, before we go any further, before we go to the next part there, Curry, just wanted to say that we just had a goblin kind of join us here in the background there. Brian Cortijo is here.
Brian!
Hello, gentlemen.
Fantastic. Glad you could join us for this. Now I'm not gonna hit you up with any questions, because we want your own show to be the questions, okay?
No Cormier questions.
No Cormier questions, I swear. So restrain yourself. If something about Cormier comes up, you need to like tie your hands down or something, okay?
I certainly will.
Okay, all right, great. Well, I'm glad you could join us, and of course, please chime in anywhere. Same thing with Eric. Eric, don't forget to chime in on any of these portions. And just because we're asking Ed, it's really questions for the entire panel. Okay.
Understood.
All right, fantastic. Okay, Curry, go ahead with that next part.
Okay, let's see what we've got here in this next one. Well, just to follow up really quick on that first section, Ed, because I'm assuming those pages are cut, are we going to go ahead and claim an NDA on the idea that the answer is yes, but we can't talk about what was cut?
Yeah, technically we can't, because I was paid for the product, therefore TSR owns that. Now, whether they have kept any of it, or whether it went into the dumpster when the big move out to Renton, which I suspect is the case, the legally, until I get an NDA lifted, I can't talk about it. What I could do, I suppose, in time to come, would be to write them up and put them at DM's Guild or whatever, but I would be starting from scratch, not resurrecting my notes from way back then, because as George Crashos will tell you, because he came and saw the physical layout here, my life is physically in utter chaos in terms of where stuff is around the house. So finding those ancient penciled notes, and then the typed version, which was typed in longhand, because this is before computers, BC.
Right.
And finding all that stuff. In the past, I've been asked to dredge stuff up, and it's always easier to just say, no, I can vaguely remember, let's start over. That's faster, because
Well, I can think of a supplement that may be coming out in a couple of years, or year and a half or so, that we can add it to.
Okay, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Curry, go ahead.
Okay, let's see what we've got. Following that same line, is the Cult of the Living Axe made up of scattered cells, or is there some overreaching, albeit loose, power structure?
There was a power structure. There is no longer, just because all of the destruction attendant upon the spell plague and the chaos that went on. A lot of people died, and the power structure that was in place got loosened, and a lot of the people who survived seized upon this as an opportunity for the power structure to go away permanently, as in, no, I'm not taking orders from you anymore, sort of thing. And which is, this is very dwarven. There comes a point at which you say, no, I am my own dwarf. Obscenity you.
It's okay.
I'm on my own from now on, sort of thing, or I'll do it my way. And as a result, what you see is everything changing. And I think that's inevitable in human nature as well. And that's one of the sort of quiet underlying things I kept trying to hammer home in the Forgotten Realms. There were many people who read Elminster in Mistranor back in the day and said, "Oh, I don't like these elves, they're too human." Yeah, that's the point. It's not human nature, it's universal sentient nature that people will do things for their own advancement. They will equate their needs with the needs of the kingdom or whatever, and they will take advantage of things. And that was my point, that decadent elves falling into the worst excesses are going to look very like human kingdoms falling into the worst excesses. Just the elves take longer to do it.
Right. So like an intrinsic morality then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an intrinsic self-interest which warps and drives everybody else's morality, whether they admit it or not. I think what you have for some of the evil, quote, evil-aligned races, if we use the D&D term, is they just don't care about hiding it. Okay. They don't rationalize it. We are what we are,
I was thinking, too, along the lines of how you were able to have some of your human characters survive the spell plague.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Could any of that have happened to the Cult of the Living Axe members?
Oh, certain of them, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Or could they have gone way underground because they're dwarves? I mean, basically, so they have a little bit longer lifespan. So 100 years will age them, but not like humans, of course.
That's right. Oh, yeah, a lot of them could have survived. I'm not saying they're wiped out. I'm saying the power structure, the people at the top who were giving orders, they lost their power. That doesn't mean they necessarily are all dead. It means the survivors said, no more of this, Jack.
Right. Okay, I got you.
And yes, one of the things that happened, there was a super secret summit at a Gen Con in which, in the 5e era, the grand plan was explained to us over our objections. And when I say our, it's Bob Salvatore and me objecting like hell at the top of our lungs. But no, this was the way that the management of the day was going to go, and this is what was going to happen. And Eric Boyd was very clear on saying, you are giving people a jumping off point from the realms, as well as giving new fans a jumping on point. You idiots,
Right.
But yeah, we then set about, and you saw in print some of the things that Bob came up with, but he was determined to rescue his characters and keep writing about them, because, as he said, long after you guys have been fired for doing this, people who love the realms will still want to read about these characters, so I'm going to rescue mine. And I was doing the same thing on a far more limited basis, keeping a few characters that I thought, no, it is essential that these still be around so we can still tell certain stories that we haven't gotten the chance to tell yet. And there were people here on this call, like Brian, who wanted to do some Cormier stories. And the tragedy is that is being swept off the table by the time jump. And it's a double tragedy, because even if you do side with the management of the day and decide, we're just going to have a time jump and we're not going to say what happened during that. The whole point of a kingdom with a lineage, a ruling lineage, is that at least in the bare bones, which is what made it into Backdrop Cormier, the article, you have to know how we got from there to here. Even if you're doing the 100-year time jump, and we're not going to talk about that, oh, there's a different person on the throne. How do we get from there to here? And if you're adventuring in the kingdom, you sure want to know that. And if they're saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to get all these new D&D gamers. They'll be brand new to the game. They won't care. Yeah, but what about the ones you got now? The ones who've been buying all your products all this time? Those people who are in the middle of playing their campaigns? Hello? But
to me, that never made any sense. It's like because with Bob, you had this basically a cash cow that was giving, not milk but gold dust.
And he said that to them. You're killing the goose that is laying the golden eggs.
No, exactly. But they walked in and basically said, you know what? We really enjoy that you make us a lot of money, but I'm going to go, wait a second, we're going to kill her, kill him, kill this character, so keep going. It's all right.
There were crazier ideas. There was one idea was, we should all swap characters. So you don't write about your iconic characters. Somebody else gets to write about it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, because you see, that puts all the power back in-house with whoever is running the IP. It severs the relationship between, say, Bob Salvatore and Drist. Because now, I'm not saying this is a good idea.
more than just a cameo type of example?
Yep.
Wow.
Well, you see, it was all about a power thing. Now we will assign who gets to write the next Elminster book or next Driss book, and the next Elminster book will not be by Ed, and the next Driss book will not be by Bob.
Didn't they learn from Mark Anthony?
Evidently, they learned the wrong lessons.
Apparently. Oh my God.
But I mean, none of this came to happen, but that was some of the thinking that was going on, and it was like, what are you doing? But anyway.
That's insane. All right, Kurt, we still got more of that same question, I think.
Okay, enough of the drama. Here we go. All right, back into the dwarves. Did any sentient weapon or object try to unite them towards some nefarious purpose in the past, or is trying to in the 1370s?
Yes.
And?
Oh, you want more?
This is why questions got to be worded more carefully. Ed is a dungeon master. It's in his blood. This is how he answers questions.
Yes.
That's true.
How shall I put this? It is rumored that some people have suspected, somebody told me once, in an unguarded moment over too much ale. Yes, I think Erik has the right of it. You wouldn't want me to give a definitive answer to that would tie the hands of the dungeon master. Surely you would want that to be something that you can zig or zag in your campaign without somebody at the table saying, but I listened to this podcast, and Ed said,
Don't forget, everything you say is canon until it's...
Yeah.
Wizard says it's not.
Yeah, but let's not go there. Yes, that is actually one of the things that in Dwarven culture, it has been debated for years amongst dwarves is, our gold lust that ruins so many of our lives. Is that really part of our inherent nature, or is that somebody doing that to us? And if so, who?
Interesting.
And why would they do that? What would they gain from it? Is that a rhetorical question?
Oh, sure. Ed could dish out the implications, but he doesn't want to feel them.
Yes, exactly. So yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
He's dancing so much I like Fred Astaire, I tell you.
Oh, I can't go up walls. Fred could go up walls.
That's true, he could. That's good. All right, let's just go to the next one, Curry. I don't think we're going to get a straight answer right.
Okay. All right, can you share any more details on the Holy Hammer, like important regional agents, plots they might be working at, and their relations with well-established dwarven holds of Toril?
Oh, no. That's a complete product.
We have all night.
Do we? Oh, good. Wow.
Cue the music, episode 2 begins.
Yeah, right. No, please no. Please, no! Stop me before I design again.
Never.
Short answer, yes. Next question.
Can you give us an abbreviated answer? How's that? Or other than hell yes.
I know you want this to be answered, Jeff. I get it. Details hazy. Ask again later.
Oh my God. Okay.
Have I been enough of a prick about
Ed, it's okay. It's not a problem.
Trained operators are standing by.
Order your
Oh. All right, I'll just keep moving down this list here and see how much of this we also can't get answered. This is going to be great. It's next section says, how is the recent resurgence of dwarven wielders of the art seen in dwarven society?
So I'm going to chime in here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, right ahead.
Please.
So it really depends on first whether you're talking about the shield dwarves of the north or the gold dwarves of the Great Rift, because remember that the gold dwarves of the Great Rift have a basically stable society. They don't have the constant orc and goblin battles that the northern dwarves have. In the north, there isn't a great tradition of use of arcane magic because everyone is necessary to fight. And Ed, I'm sure will chime in on this, but by the time a dwarf is old enough and sturdy enough to start studying magic, they're also old enough and sturdy enough to stand a post and learn how to fight. And it takes years to study arcane magic, but it doesn't take years to be trained as goblin fodder. And when you have small populations that are not easily replenished, you can't afford someone who can't fight, can't smith, can't craft, can't don armor. The Thunder Blessing alleviated that some, and so with the resurgence of dwarven populations in the north, you start to see more dwarven wizards, but that takes a long time to establish dwarven traditions of magic. So you probably have some dwarves from the north going to the Great Rift to study with them and being seen as kind of uncultured hicks and taking decades before they can bring that knowledge back. I think you're more likely to see dwarven sorcerers who don't need to study quite as rigorously, incorporating battle magic first. And, those dwarves are going to be more easily accepted. But dwarves that focus on magic that isn't particularly useful to battle applications are going to have more difficulty reintegrating into the kind of dwarven society that we're used to reading about. Now, that changes a little bit in the piece that's brought about by the Silver Marches, because dwarves don't have to fight on a daily basis anymore. And I think you're going to, now that the Orc War is over, and you're starting to see I'm talking now in the 1480s and 1490s, you're starting to see Bruenor's influence in kind of restabilizing dwarven society in the north. I think you're going to start to see another kind of resurgence of dwarven magic, assuming that the orcs kind of go back into their holes. Because every time they come out, it saps that diversity of culture among the dwarves. The stronger they could be, the more they can do by exploring different parts of their society and culture.
Right. Now, I have a question here, because you said something about if the dwarves, certain dwarves turn to only embracing art under Mistra and not really shunning their dwarven heritage, but focusing strictly on magic. And if they are shunned by the rest of dwarven society, isn't that going to start creating cults of ever more powerful dwarven magic users throughout the realms?
Well, I wasn't suggesting that they'd be shunned, more that they'd be seen as kind of odd. So there would be it's kind of like if you have a family, and everyone in your family was a sports player, right?
Right.
I played football in high school, you're going to play football. I don't want to play football, Dad. I want to study biology because I want to go and become a biochemist.
No, son of mine.
Right. There you go, yeah.
I'm talking about, intrafamilial and societal pressure to abandon the study of magic and do what a proper dwarf does. A proper dwarf, of course, being in quotes. In some cases, dwarves wouldn't have available to them the necessary resources to study magic. You can't study fireballs underground in close quarters. You can't practice that magic. You can destroy the whole community.
We know too well about bad.
I mean,
things about that. I know it's coming. I'm just going to
ask you how big. I didn't ask you how big the cavern was.
Everybody's going to hear it, and it's going to be bad.
Okay, so you can practice, but you can probably only practice once.
Yes, that's it.
It's like, I didn't ask you how big the cavern was, I said I cast Fireball.
Right. And that can be problematic, but it's also, if you don't have the excuse where you're saying, well, I have to study my spells, and, there's an orc horde at the door. You've got to protect your community. And the dwarven psychology of obligation to the community, obligation to the clan and to the clan hold is really overpowering in those situations. You even though, in 20 years you might be able to replace 100 warriors on the battlefield, the battle is now. And so you don't have the luxury of kind of sitting and studying. And I think that's where the delay in kind of an explosion in dwarven wizards is happening. The Thunder Blessing was in the early 1300s. So now in the late 15th century DR, where we're approaching 1500, those those dwarves would be something around 150 years old, and so they would really be coming into their own as powerful wizards, not just your regular adventuring wizards. And I'm looking forward to seeing those wizards in the realms. I think someone should start writing about them. It's not something that would automatically happen. I think, in other kinds of communities where they're not constantly in conflict, that process would occur much more quickly.
Okay, I guess in the sense of maybe they wouldn't shun them, but their practice of magic would be more defensive, building up defensive forces against intruders, imbuing weapons with greater bonuses, that kind of thing.
I think so. Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree, wholeheartedly. I think the vital thing you said there was the society can't afford it, can't afford the development time. And so there's so many things working against it that the only way to develop is to leave the society. In other words, the dwarf goes and tries to find some non-dwarf and says, "Hey, are you taking on apprentices?" And then, of course, there may be the prejudice on the part of the wizard he appears at the doorstep of and says, yes, I need someone to cook for me and do my dishes, so come right in.
Or after he stops laughing, right?
Yeah, as opposed to, really? It's sort of like the dwarf who finishes a battle. He's hairy. He's covered with sweat and other people's blood. He does not smell nice. And he walks in and says, "I'd like to enter the beauty contest." It wouldn't be the first choice of someone to say, "Sure, no problem." That might not, so there's all that to overcome it, and overcoming all that takes time.
Right.
And it also means individuals might manage it. A large proportion of dwarves that might then change society would probably not manage it. Not in the short term.
Right.
You guys realize what you've just done, don't you?
Yes.
Do you see the glaring obviousness that's sitting in front of us?
What, the Dwarven beauty contest?
Well, I mean, yes, of course, genius, brilliant, I love it. But you just gave a viable reason for the 100 years that we missed.
Yes, this is quite true.
There it is.
You mean this was the grand plan of the Wizard of Wizards?
Dwarven wizards. That's what we needed. We needed to chop out 100 years so we could have dwarven wizards.
Well, just in full disclosure, well, partial disclosure, I can't disclose fully. There were a lot of conversations that took place with a certain subset of us once we found out the length of time that the setting would be skipping. And in particular, those of us like me and George Krashos and Eric Boyd, who placed a special emphasis on the historicity of the realms, of the making, if you're at A and you get to N, filling in all those letters so that the development makes sense and is natural. As soon as we found out how long that skip was going to be, some of us set to work trying to fill in those gaps anyway, and making that make as much sense as we could. Ed remembers some of these conversations.
Oh, yeah.
And some of that stuff made it into print, and some of it didn't because we weren't privy to the particular plans that Wizards had. And some things were adapted to fit. But, those 100 years matter.
Yes.
And the things that happened matter to the people that experienced them. They may not matter to the people that are talking about them now, but they certainly mattered to the people that lived and died in those 100 years. There's whole human generations that we didn't even get to experience.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah. A generation and a half of people.
And so those experiences shape the realities of the people that are living in what we would call the modern realms. And so at least having a broad understanding of what happened then is necessary to make sense of the current reality. Even if you don't know the details, this particular battle happened on this date of this year, and here are the list of heroes that died, you don't necessarily need that. But to know that there was a battle between this country and there's still tensions between them, that matters. That's important.
Right. No, that's true. Absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that. You've had that many of what happened. They just say, "Oh, it's gone 100 years," and that's all we know. But yeah, there's stories to be told in that time, and I wish that Wizards would tell them, or Ed, one of them.
Well, no. You see, the thing is, there are things I can go ahead and tell and things I can't go ahead and tell. One of the things I wanted to do, if they were going to do this 100-year time jump, can I just write in the 100 years that you know?
Right.
Because of course, that's what they were trying to get away from. If you're licensing the realms to outsiders who may not be gamers and may not know any of this stuff, and they just want to make up whatever will work best for their TV show or movie or lunch bucket or bendable hand puppet or whatever it is, it's an awful lot easier to say to them, yeah, you have a free hand. And so therefore they didn't want those 100 years filled in. But if you care about the realms as a historical setting, and if you're in the middle of using it in your own play around your gaming table, it matters very much what happened in that missing gap, and you want it filled in. Anyway, that's why, in my case, a lot of people say to me online, oh, why don't you just do this? Or why have you never done that? As if I still control the realms. No, once I sold it as a setting back in 1986, I don't control what comes out. And unlike a fan sitting at home, I can do far less in terms of having my hands free to write anything I want. I suppose I could do it once and burn the bridges, but I mean... Right. Yeah, and the other thing is, I am privy to a lot of the stuff going on inside, not nearly so much in the way the Realms is now, because it's being used differently than it was in the days of TSR and a large in-house design staff. But I quite often know about things that I'm not supposed to know about officially, or that I'm not supposed to breathe one word about. And I have to not say and do something that makes it clear that I'm making an informed decision on that basis, if you see what I mean. It's supposed to be like, oh, I didn't know that, But at all times, what I'm planning on doing and what I'm steering people doing is based on that knowledge. I mean, for years, Brian and I would have conversations at Gen Cons and so on and elsewhere, and about, what we could write about in Cormier. And I was desperately trying to see if he could get a chance to do Cormier novels. And at the same time, I knew what they were about at the other end. And I can't fight too hard, because if I fight too hard, they just say, you're right, Ed, you just want this, forget it, But I knew all the time what the path they were on. So, and it was like, can we at least get these out into the world before? And the answer, of course, in the end was no.
Right.
And there's nothing we could do about that. And I can't push things too hard. But greedy me, as a fan of the Realms, as well as the guy who happened to create it, I want all these Realm stories. I want shelves and shelves of leather tomes with gilded pages and little ribbon bookmarks in them that tell all these novels. I want all these people. I thought every single one of the young dragons got a raw deal in the end. We didn't get to see all the glorious books they could have given us if given the chance. And of course, the whole point was, when they started, that's why the young dragons existed, it was to, let's bring on a new generation. They're all going to get their chance. That was the thinking then. It didn't stay that way, because some things don't work out the way. But I mean, that was the plan from the beginning. And I sure wanted to see it. I would love to have 70, 80, 90 Realms novels, brand new, that I've never read before, with names on the spines of the books that are people I don't know, that are going to be, oh, good, here's somebody else getting a chance to write in the Realms. This is what I want, and this is what we may never, or we might again, but the way it's going to work right now, it would be licensed. Everything is licensed. Bob's latest trilogy, the one he's in the middle of now, is a licensed product. It's not being done in-house, because that's not what Hasbro does. And this was something Brian Thompson told me years and years ago when Hasbro bought the Realms. He said, well, that's it. Hasbro isn't in the business of publishing novels, fiction. They never are. They shed it every company they buy. So it's just a matter of time. And in the end, he was right. But we fought and we fought and we fought to keep it going as long as we could.
Yeah, I know. It's heartbreaking. It really is, actually. So, but we'll do what we can. But before I read this next one, I wanted to ask you. I have another question here. But I think we talked about the Moonshades in an earlier podcast. And didn't we get the India Hammer dropped on us?
Pretty much. I can tell you there's an excellent Moonshades product being put out right now. Erik Menza and others are working on this, and there's a series of Moonshade products coming out right now. I recommend everybody go to the Dungeon Master Guild and have a look.
Okay. Okay, so I won't waste my time posting the next question that I had on here about Moonshay. But now I don't know how much of NDA hammer you're going to drop on this one too. But we're gonna see, and my bottle of bourbon is in the other room. I should probably go get it.
I am worthy.
Yeah, you are worthy. That's true.
I can wield the NDA hammer.
You can. You're very good at it, unfortunately, and I'm going to take it away from you next time I see you. Just so you know. So this is from Desert over on Candlekeep. He says there is scarce information on the city of Waterdeep, other than the fact that it's one of the oldest and most populous drow cities in the world. It seems to have had pretty significant influence on the land surrounding it, notably such as Kalmshan above. And is there more tangible lore that could be shared about this ancient city beyond he knows about the wars fought against the surface drow heretic communities in the Forest of Mir? Is there anything else you can shed light on about that?
There's not a lot of established lore about that city, and the reason was the way Bob and I and everybody else was treating it is this is the old guard city. This is small C conservative. They don't want change, So therefore, unless there's going to be an upheaval there, they are one of the least interesting places to write about because they are old guard reactionary, as opposed to a place where a hero might arise or something might change. They are against change.
Right. So do they follow the same hierarchical society, matriarchal society as Menza Branson did?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
At least that was the thinking. Yeah.
That was the thinking behind it. And given how old and powerful it is there any interesting and distinct qualities that make it stand out compared to Menza Branson?
It is far more static. Because what Bob showed us when he introduced us to Menzo in Homeland, you were seeing houses rise and fall. You were seeing houses dare to wipe out other houses by making war on them within the city. That's something that is almost unheard of in the city we're talking about now. Because, no, please do not destabilize us. Please do not weaken us with casualties. So don't do that, is the local thing.
Right, so there was not as much of a fight to be the top house as there was in Menza Branson. Menza Branson was just in constant turmoil, it seemed like, of who's going to be the best house, who's going to take that 10th position now that one house has been destroyed. Is it the same with Waterdeep, or is it just more like, you know what, we're happy the way we are, let's keep it this way until we need to change?
Yeah, don't rock the boat. And anybody who tries to rock the boat, everybody will turn on them because they threaten the status quo. So they're a threat to everybody. So jump on them.
Yeah, it's a shame Erik isn't here because he went over some of the stuff in Drew Orden's Guide to the Underdark.
Yes, he did.
And really the conflict there seems to be more over religious disagreements than political maneuvering. And when there are, I guess I'd say, fine gradations on religious doctrine, the conflicts are driven in a different way. So I don't know that you'd see the ability to kind of unite with another house to take down a rival house the way that you see in Menza Branson, which is very much what you see in the north. And I'm sure Erik would be willing to go into more detail if he were here, but he's not. So I just wanted to touch on that really briefly. That it's not that they're boring so much as there's no role for an outsider really. So that's why there's not a whole lot written on it, because unless you're a worshiper of Lolth, you don't have a place in that city.
Yeah.
So I think that answers that question pretty well, actually. So Curry, you want to take this next one here?
All right, let's see what we got here. Garrett Strand from Facebook. He's got a question. The location. Oh, jeez. You did this on purpose.
Yes.
You did.
I will point out that this is a Cormier question.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, then we can table it. Great. I don't have to ask it at all. It's perfect. I love it.
You want to table it until Brian's on by himself?
Well, no, Ed will hopefully be there too. But just so you know, the pronunciation is Thalglora Morgurus.
Thalglora Morgurus. I'm gonna have to practice that from now until the next session. Thalglora Morgurus. Okay.
Thalglora Morgurus.
I saw that and I just got through the foul and I went, this is a Curry question.
You have fun with that one. Next time. We'll skip this one.
Joe. His name is Joe.
Joe. That's right. He has many shiny things. We call him Joe.
No, Thalglor is the purple dragon of Cormier, which is why this is a Cormier question.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You know what?
Cool.
I had it sectioned off in my notes, but didn't say anything about Cormier, so I did not know that. Okay.
And the follow-up question that I will have is, which one?
Ah,
There's more than one.
Yes.
So is this a okay? Well, we'll get into that later. Okay.
No. There's not more than one dragon. There's more than one lair.
yeah.
This was a dragon of immense age. There's no way he only had one lair.
Yep. Oh, and Jeff, don't use the phrase table. Because
Why?
to Americans, it means let's defer this to the next meeting or a later meeting. To Brits, Canadians, Australians, everyone in the Commonwealth, it means put it on the table for the agenda right now.
Oh,
right now,
right.
Oh yeah, as a
Okay,
parliamentarian, I have to agree with Ed.
That's my fault. I said that. That's my bad.
There are to Americans, table means to lay aside until next time.
Mull it over. Think about it some more, and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, and for the those in the British tradition, it means we're going to handle this now.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and Eric,
Good
I got
to
a
know.
question for you, buddy. Why aren't you writing more about dwarves?
Yeah, I will defer that question to Wizards. So please redirect that to Wizards of the Coast. I'm sure they can answer that question for you.
I mean, you had plenty. I mean, you had ample space to put a dwarf in your novels. Come on.
Well, okay, so there is a small tradition of
Oh, you had to say
dwarf-like stand. Yeah, I did.
It's a short
It's a short-lived tradition of. There is a city-state in the world of Ruin where the folk are smaller and burlier because they are used to living underground and have lived underground for centuries and centuries. So they kind of evolved in that direction through, these people can survive better, and so they have children who are shaped more like them that way. But they haven't been a real major force in the World of Ruin novels. One of them shows up in book 4. So, yeah, there's a dwarf.
There's a dwarf.
Yeah.
Actually, I do see
Relax,
that.
Jeff, don't kill me.
Don't kill. No, it's okay. I'm working on my own dwarven supplement right now, so it's okay. So I'll
Yes.
talk about that another time. I am working on one now that's going to be new, improved dwarfs. It's going to have that new improved sign on their back. So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'll show you all.
That's good. That's very good.
Dwarven supplement. Careful there, Jeff. They won't be dwarves anymore. They'll grow.
Just take 2 dwarves and call me in the morning, right?
Yeah, these new improved supplements. I know about them.
Well,
Jeff is in fact the world's largest dwarf. This is a true
Oh.
that's.
Documented
I'm
fact.
gonna kill you, Curry.
Well, Jeff, I was actually thinking about this earlier today because I know how much you like dwarves. And what I was hoping that we could do, you and I, is that we could come up with a dwarf, preferably, who I could put in my Westgate campaign setting.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding?
Maybe his name would be Joff.
Joffrey.
Well, we don't want everyone to hate him, so let's hit the brakes on that one. Hey, Game of Thrones spoilers. Okay, so anyway, but you and I should definitely talk about that. I don't know if you have time to talk about that right now. We can come up with a character right now, but that could, take away from your podcast here.
No, never. Are you kidding? I mean, we talked about the phylactery of a potted plant with Eric Boyd. Come on.
Well, okay, so you want your dwarf to be a lich. Okay, that's interesting.
He just started studying prior to the spell plague. So 100 years later, he wakes up, and there you go.
Exactly. We were talking about the thunder blessing, weren't we?
We absolutely were, so there you go.
Alright, so Joff, who is a dwarf spellcaster of some kind. What kind of spellcaster, Jeff?
Um,
And I'm asking these questions to Jeff, but anyone else can, weigh in.
Can weigh in.
I think we just started a new episode of To Spin a Yarn, but let's go with it.
Not in the face, right?
Oh dear.
It's like spinning yarn, except it's like birth a dwarf.
Spread your legs, Massey. Come on.
Wow.
Oh boy.
No, hold on. I thought dwarves lay eggs. Is that? Are we not going with that, Ed?
This
Please
isn't.
tell me we're still going with that.
This isn't the Orville.
No.
Well, shit. Okay. So, all right. So, is a dwarf spellcaster? What kind of spellcaster?
What are my choices?
Don't say warlock. I have too many warlocks in there already.
No,
That's a
warlock.
spoiler.
On a more serious note, Jeff, you know what would really work well?
What's
Do
that?
you recall in one of our games, this was years back, you had given us an item, an artifact of some sort. It was a new type, not new, very old, new to us, interpretation of magic, and it was something that you had taken from either a supplement or a book you read, and it wasn't something I was familiar with at all. It was called a graveling pot, and these particular casters were very in tune with elemental magics of the earth and very much in contact with the floor beneath them and the elements around them, and how they manipulated the physical stone and earth to their will as part of their magic. Now, for a dwarf, that just sounds like it'd be right up its alley.
Right. Well, that was something I actually pulled when I was reading Stephen R. Donaldson.
Okay, I got you.
Ah.
And they had that one giant had that. I don't know if it was called a graveling pod. That's maybe what I called it. But they had that little thing that he could use to manipulate the earth and stuff with. So, yeah.
Hey,
I
while
always
you're
thought that was
thinking about that,
fun.
Huh?
while you're considering your dwarf's magic, should I answer these questions about Westgate and stuff?
Oh no, please, absolutely. As a matter of fact, before you answer that, hold on just a second. We haven't heard from Spike, Murphy, and Rose in forever. It's like they never existed. But I have a question by them.
I have lured Spike back.
Lured the
Yes.
Spike. He took some time away from his bridal chamber to send us a message.
Oh, excellent.
He got married in just before the last podcast, and
Oh, congratulations, Spike.
him and
Also, condolences.
We'll cut that one part out and give it to your wife.
I don't know. You
No,
see
no,
the
no.
smile
Best
on that
wishes.
guy's face. He looks happy to be married. That's for
best
sure.
Wishes for a great adventure.
No, he is. No, Spike is very happy. Very happy. He's in love with Rose. Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful.
Actually, her name's not Rose. It's something Rose, because Rose is her last name. Because him and his wife they hyphenated their name and switched them, so he's Spike Murphy Rose and she's Rose Murphy. So
Oh, neat.
okay,
So, questions.
the question is basically, what can Eric say about the current status of Mintassin and the Magnificent aliases? Are either still hanging around Westgate? And are there any remnants of the Eye of Justice in Westgate or anywhere else? And what is Kalen Dren up to in the 5e era? And of course, what happened down Shadow and Waterdeep?
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions. Fortunately, I have them typed out in front of me, so we'll go through them one by one.
Perfect.
So I did a little design just recently, just a couple days ago, about Mintassin's holdings in Westgate. As you know, he has both his townhouse and the Blaze House. I do most of my work, I source most of my research from Cloak and Dagger, which is a pretty amazing book, and I highly recommend anyone interested in Westgate to check out this book. In that book, you have the Blaze House, which is supposed to be a mystery for your PC. So if you're planning to run a Westgate campaign, the information about that is better kept to the DM until you walk your PCs through it. But it has connections to the planes, and it's this high magic, high octane thrill ride sort of place. And I wanted to preserve that element into my book that I'm writing. So that's still there. I haven't decided specifically on whether Mintassin himself is still around in Westgate or not. I plan to ask Jeff about that. Jeff grew up because Jeff is basically the guy who created that character, and I think that it's one of my design philosophies about the realms is that I try and check in with the people who created and popularized these characters. Oh, I see the picture of Spike and Rachel. Oh,
yeah, I thought I'd put that up. I thought I'd put it up there so you know who asked. He asks a lot of great questions, so we actually had him at one point send in audio questions for Ed and everybody. So
nice.
He'll be doing more in the future. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's just they look so happy. Okay, about Alias, I'm not sure. We'll see. I'll leave that as a little bit of a mystery there. I did write a thing with an Elias clone, however, so look forward to that.
Oh, you did? Did you say anything about that?
No, I'm going to leave that as a teaser. Remnants of the Eye of Justice in Westgate or anywhere else in Faerun. Well, the Eye of Justice still exists as a organization in Westgate. As I said, one of the meta stories is how they are modernizing and adapting to existing in this modern context. One of the campaign events that can happen in your campaign, and I plan this to be in my Westgate Irregulars campaign at some point, is that the various churches of the reestablished deities come to Westgate to inspect the Eye of Justice and determine whether it is a true manifestation of the faith or if it needs to be purged. So essentially, there is a crusade declared against the Eye of Justice, or not, depending on the actions of your characters. So, yeah, it's very tied into that story. What is Kaelin Dren up to? Kaelin Dren is a Watcher in the Eye of Justice in the 1490s. Watcher is, for those who are familiar with the Eye of Justice, I don't want to say leader necessarily of the organization, but a middle management position in the organization.
Right.
Now, so.
Oh, thank you, Brian.
Yeah. And now that I say that, I realize that I might have changed my mind and made him a vigilant seer, and the vigilant seers are the leaders of the organization. And the Watchers serve them directly. Each Vigilant Seer has a number of Watchers under them, and then the Watchers command a number of Knights under them. That's the organizational structure. So I guess the answer is I haven't really decided, but he is involved in the organization. He is not carrying around Vindicator, because at the end of Eye of Justice still happened, and he hasn't quite recovered from that yet. But he does have the axe, so he's still around, and he's still interesting and broody. Alright, what happened to Downshadow in Waterdeep? Well, I believe if you play the adventure, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, you will, which is set in on the mountain, you will discover that Downshadow was reconquered by the monsters and the horrors beneath the streets of Waterdeep, and it is no longer a place where civilized people live. Not that it ever really was, but you understand what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. Anything else you can say?
I'm mostly out of Waterdeep right now, so I haven't really kept up on the lore about Waterdeep specifically. I've been very, very interested in what's going on with Westgate. For those of you who have read my Shadowbane novels, you will see a number of familiar faces show up from those novels in my campaign setting as important people in the city.
Okay, well, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's actually great. I look forward to all that information coming out. I think it's going to be great. So, Ed. Darling. I don't know if we mentioned this before. We may have, but I think this is new. Is there a Minotaur kingdom near the Forgotten Realms?
There's a Minotaur kingdom in the Forgotten Realms. It's just off the map that we've explored of so far of Faerun. Do you know where the Olgarth and the Other East is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you go sort of southeast from there along that coast, and there's a Minotaur kingdom there, and there's a sizable Minotaur community in Veldorn, the land of monsters.
Okay, can you say a lot about it or anything
Well,
about it?
I'm gonna chime in and ask
Yeah, go
a
ahead.
clarifying
Please,
question.
please.
Now, there are two prevailing conceptions of Minotaurs in D&D. There is the classic kind of Greek conception, and then there's the Dragonlance conception of the honor-bound but still kind of evil society. What is your take on them as relates to their communities? Are they more leaving aside the connection to Baphomet for a minute, are they more the Dragonlance conception or more the kind of big brutish monster?
Me, personally?
You, Ed, yes.
Yeah,
You.
there are the brutes, the monsters, outnumber the more intelligent and social sort greatly, and therefore the brute monsters are the ones that most humans come into contact with, and they think all Minotaurs are like that. So we have, in the same way that dragons vary greatly in intelligence, and the game has tended to emphasize, because they wanted to make dragons, because the name of the game was Dungeons and Dragons, they wanted to make dragons formidable foes. There was all this thing about dragons getting really smarter and more powerful as they got older. But there are lots of dragons that are idiotic brutes, and we see a lot of them in fantasy literature, and they can be easily defeated or tricked. In the same way, the Minotaurs there were many who were, how shall I put this? I see Minotaurs as having governed by what we would call their lusts, as in most Minotaurs have hair trigger tempers, they get into heat, they take out their aggressions immediately, they don't hold grudges, they get even right now, even if it costs them their lives, or try to get even right now, so that they are what we would call brutes, easily goaded. But that's not all Minotaurs, that's the ones that humans have come into contact with the most, and therefore the ones that are depicted in the rule books the most. And the realms, is not Kryn. I was creating all the stuff for the realms long before there was a Kryn, and before there was a D&D game. So I was coming up with my own conceptions of things, and everything had to be shifted slightly when I got my hands on the first D&D rule books and said, okay, so I'm going to make this a D&D world. Everything in here is going to fit. So I had to make some changes to things. And one of them was to change some of the monster races, because I had to account for the fact that there were still monsters around for your player characters to deal with. Why didn't they deal with all these years ago if they wanted to get rid of them? Because, again, human nature, they tend to attack anything they don't like, or anything that's dangerous to them, or anything that's competition. I mean, that's what humans do. It's terrible, but we do it time and again. So why now? Why is there anything left for your player characters to do? Why wasn't this taken care of years ago? And of course, one of the things was that we didn't have enough power. We had too much problems on our plates. There were these powerful orcs, because power of numbers, and elves because so much more advanced culture and magic hampering us, and then there were too many monsters for us to deal with. And Minotaurs were one of the ones where, because they had hair trigger tempers, because they couldn't, the ones that were in immediate conflict with us, we fought to the death early, and the ones that were left were the remote ones. Therefore, they could safely be placed off the map or around the edges of the map, and we were learning to trade with some of them now, and they weren't so bad after all, those few survivors we had left.
Right.
and that I was doing that because that seemed to me to maximize play opportunities in the game and storytelling opportunities in game-related stuff, which was how the published realms was developing. I was always, in my back of my mind is, okay, what's the best play opportunities? What gives us the most, so that drove a lot of the stuff in the realms, how we depicted them. What gives us the most on the table? And part of that is, why now? Why have this problem or situation or the way it is persisted up until this moment?
Okay, that's food for thought.
Yeah, I know. You're going, huh? So where does that leave us?
No, not really. I would just
leave us with an answer of yes.
Answer of yes, exactly. I was thinking while you were saying that, because I get so lulled into happiness when I hear you talk about anything in the realms. I have to say, it's like a, short of an aphrodisiac, but more of a relaxing halcyon dream that I get into. That when you talk about it is, and I was just thinking, right
Jeff,
now, if
just put all your money into this account, and all your troubles.
Yes, the credit card number is.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, right now, if Hasbro just walked up and said, "I'm done with this," slapped their hands together and threw the realms back and said, "It's all yours, take it. We don't want anything else to do with it." What would you change from this point in the next 5 years?
Okay. Here's what I would do. I would convene a gathering of all the good realms heads. You guys, George, Eric Boyd, I'd want Aaron Evans in. I want Susan Morris, people like that. I'd want Jeff's input, Jeff Grubb. And I'd say, okay, on the gaming front, let's make sure we have the best darn. And by the way, I think they have just done it right now. D&D Essentials kit, starter set, box set for novice gamers to start with. Okay, now all of you get to do your pet projects as low-level mini or low to mid-level adventures running off from this in various directions. Have fun. Go in all in different directions. And then everybody will get to, okay, what's the novel you want to write? By that, I don't mean a one-shot, I mean a series. What do you want to write? What do we want to see more of? And then do them.
The amazing part is that if you took 1,000 Realms fans and ask them what would they want to do next, you get 1,000 different answers, because
of course
there's so many places in the realms that need that push. They need to be written about. They need to have more lore poured into them, because even Waterdeep, I've said in the past, I don't want to see another Waterdeep product, but you know what, I would see another Waterdeep product if it meant that they were putting out stories about the people there. Not the same old adventurers, or maybe their kids or their grandkids, because it's 100 years ago. But I'd like to hear more about those shopkeepers, what their thoughts were after all this happened. How the new realms heroes were looked at as they came pouring into Waterdeep or Westgate or Shadowdale or anywhere. It's like, we've been through this, we don't want to go do it again, or hey, come on in, we want you to come in here. There's so many things that could be written about that it to me, it just boggles the mind.
And that's the thing. We all want to spend time in a world that we know isn't real, that we can have fun in. And so different things about that imaginary created world appeal to different people. Some of us want the endless fighting, some of us want endless romance in the realms, or whatever, and everything in between. So we all have different things that we want to see more of, different headspaces we want to spend more daily time in when we're away from the real world. So I'm totally okay with the fact that the realms has to be all things to all people. That's what's been driving it. It was the land of 1,000 stories. 1,000 stories is how I sold it to TSR back in the day. This is not the problem with Dragonlance was that it was telling one epic tale. It was doing the Lord of the Rings thing, the quest to save the world. Okay, what do you do for an encore? Okay, save it again. Yeah, let's flip the world over, see the side we haven't seen, and save the world again. But it is an anticlimax. David and Leigh Eddings did the same thing with the Bulgaria. They painted themselves into a corner. Okay, now the publisher wants sequels. What do? We save the world again. I wanted the realms to be all things to all people, so it would last. But what that means is everybody wants something different, and that's great. It just means it'll take us forever to get around to it. But that's the whole point of having a big team. Then the problem becomes, and I've learned this the hard way with trying the thing with the Ed Greenwood group, the realm's traffic cop. keeping people out of each other's way as they all try and do different things with the same characters. Oh, I need to kill the King Cormier because I need to tell this great story. No, says someone else. I need that king to stay on the throne. But aside from the realm's traffic cop keeping people from running into each other, it would be great. And that's the hard job. And the main thing would be seeing all of you run with the realms in different directions at once. I would love to see the realms as a great collective, that where everybody would write about everything they wanted till the end of time. I would buy them.
Oh, are you kidding?
The world's greatest sandbox. I love it.
Yeah.
Right. No, that would be an absolute incredible feat to pull off. I know that I would be thrilled. I know that everybody would be thrilled. Absolutely. So let me ask: does anybody else have any more questions? I'm kind of fresh out of questions right now. Is that a big no?
The silence was deafening.
So, Jeff.
Yes.
What kind of
About your
spellcaster?
dwarf.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
All right, wizard, right? Wizard? Yeah, okay. Wizard.
Oh, you caught me off guard. I really would have to an armored battle wizard, I guess.
Armored battle wizard. Yeah, okay.
This sounds more like a special than a podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys should have like a half an hour where you dedicate to this for listeners that really want to delve into the nitty gritty.
I'm game for that, Jeff. We can Skype and just build a character. I think that could be really fun.
That'd be fantastic. I'd love to do that. We'll pick a time and we'll just Skype a character together.
Cool. You're gonna let me roll on my on my backgrounds. I have this random background generator, which I'm planning to release on the guild. It's gonna be real cool. And you're gonna let me roll on that, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
I'm putty in your hands, Eric.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. Let's arrange a time for that.
I can see the hairy dwarven courtesan coming right now.
Ed, how did you know?
It has to have a Scottish accent.
Well.
Well, you have to make sure that you put so many consonants in the name that it can only be pronounced as.
All right. Let's keep these things in mind, eh?
Absolutely.
I bring news from a lair.
No, absolutely. And I know what we can do. Why don't you guys say something about the upcoming Candlekeep get-together, Leaves of the World Tree?
Okay, so every Gen Con since 2012, if we're not going to count the 2011 Candlekeep Zero, we've held a seminar at Gen Con called Candlekeep Presents. And the goal is to put together Friends of the Forgotten Realms with designers, authors, people who've worked on the realms either professionally, through fiction, through adventure writing, supplement writing, now through the DMs Guild. We just want a place for people to come and kind of talk about the realms, especially since Wizards has reduced its presence at Gen Con. Despite the fact that they use Baldwin Games for their kind of organized play content, there's no place for people to come together and kind of just enjoy the Forgotten Realms as a setting, which is what we hope to do with Candlekeep. And the theme for this year's seminar is Leaves of the World Tree. It refers to the third edition conception of the Forgotten Realms cosmology, the World Tree cosmology. But really it's about the various worlds and realities that are connected to the Forgotten Realms and how they influence our understanding of the world. And it's kind of an excuse to talk about other planes, other realities. We every year we put together a collectible pin, and Leaves of the World Tree sounded like a good thing that I could turn into a pin to. So we're working on that right now. We're hoping everybody that comes to Gen Con is and is a Realms fan. Well, why you would be listening to this if you're not a Realms fan, I'm not entirely sure. But if you're a Realms fan and you're coming to Gen Con, the event is held every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Again, it's Candlekeep Presents Leaves of the World Tree. Tickets are still available, and we hope to see you there. Eric, do you want to add anything?
That was an excellent summary. At the event, we gather as many realms luminaries as we can, designers, writers who have contributed to the realms over the past years. We're not entirely sure who all is going to show up until the event, so it's a fun little surprise, and you can hear some really great realm stories and just share in your love of the setting that has inspired us and driven so much of our gaming and our imagination.
No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're going to just the Mages and Sages podcast. We have a few gifts we're going to be giving away as well. Some T-shirts to people, and we may have a little. If y'all want to come up with some questions, Brian or Eric or even Ed, to send in to us that we can ask and give away T-shirts that way. We'd like to do that just to kind of help promote everything and get people interested in coming in. And then Ed and I are going to have a nice little announcement to make there too as well about something that we're planning. Hopefully, we'll have more information on that later.
Wahaha!
Wahaha?
That was good.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, huh? Okay.
Eric and Brian, before we wrap it up, could you guys throw out your social media contacts so people can get in touch?
Yeah, my Twitter is Erik Scott de Bie, just my whole name, ErikScottDebie. That's also where I am on Facebook, and yeah, those are the two best places to find me.
Great. Appreciate that. And Brian, how about you?
My Twitter is Brian, just at Brian Cortijo, BrianCortijo. I don't have an Instagram, and I probably wouldn't share it with everybody. Anyway, and I don't have a professional Facebook. My Facebook is just personal. So really, Twitter is the place to go for my more public needs. If anyone has any questions about the Candlekeep seminar, I can also be reached at candlekeep.presents@gmail.com. We actually a couple of times a year, like 2 or 3 times a year, we'll send out updates and remind people about what's going on with the seminar. So if you're interested in getting more information when those notices come out, you can also let me know through that email address.
Oh, fantastic. It was very hard tonight, Brian, to keep from asking you those questions that I had here because I kept having to skip over them in my notes. So I look forward to our get-together when next month when we can ask them and get some great answers, which I know they're going to be great. And I do look forward to that. And Ed, anything new for you coming up?
Not that I can talk about. Sorry.
Not that you could talk about. Now I know that you don't go far for any kind of conventions or get-togethers. I know I saw something recently that somebody had contacted us about. It's about a play being put on based on the realms.
There is an arts festival in late August every year in Port Hope, in Ontario, on the north shore of Lake Ontario, the place where radium was discovered and developed. So everybody glows. And that is where I work daily at a public library. And they have an arts thing, and their theme this year is Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. And I think what they plan to do for a day is to have a D&D thing that I narrate or dungeon master. I'm not quite sure on the nitty-gritty details, and actors up on a stage will act out what is happening in the adventure. And this is it is sort of like an open-air version of what Gen Con used to be, a game fair. So there will be artists selling fantasy costumes and jewelry and paintings, and there will be people who will paint little fake tattoos on your kid that look like a dragon and stuff like that. It'll be a sort of a day festival in the park thing, and I think it's called a critical madness.
Critical Massive Adventure.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
That's it. Yeah.
It says summer is coming. Critical Massive Adventure. It's August 17th in Port Hope, Ontario.
Yes,
And actually, they have a GoFundMe or a funding page as well.
yeah, that particular time of year is crazy for me because I will be at the gaming garage at the Canadian National Exhibition for 2 days. I'll be there, and then I'll be at Fan Expo in Toronto, and they all overlap.
But so closer to home, closer to the next, say, 30 days or 45 days, is there any place that you're going to be going to for a reading, for a live gaming session like you did at the one pub in Toronto? Anything like that coming up soon?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, the people who played in the second one, we had to stop in the middle of the adventure, so they all want to get together again. And they just sent me a messenger message in the middle of all this saying, "Oh, we can all do this one day, so how about it?" So that's going to happen. And what else is that? And in September, I will go to Phantasm in Peterborough, Ontario. These are all things that I can get to and get back to my wife for the evening, because that's what is affecting me. And that is the terrible thing about Gen Con. Indy is not a hub. So unless I have a private jet and clearance, and I don't bother with customs, which will make me very unpopular with the authorities in the United States, there's no way I can get there, spend any time there, and get back inside a day, because I have to take connecting flights, and it just doesn't work out.
Right. No, that's okay. But coming up, and no, you're not going to be at the one in August, then the play.
I'll be there. Yeah, for 1 day. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what day that'll be?
No. I think it'll probably be the Saturday. I am guessing here. The ladies running this, they buttonhole me to ask me questions about D&D. A local pub is involved, and they sit and ask me questions and write down the answers, and then they get me to commit to do things. So yes, I'll be doing a lot of things at Critical Madness, but I don't quite remember right now what they all are.
Well, that's a Saturday that they're doing this, I guess.
So it's probably the Saturday I'll be there being Dungeon Master. There's also going to be a live chess game, where that was one of the ideas, with everybody in armor. But we'll see.
Full size? You mean like a full size chess? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the ideas. The ideas may change.
I can just got a vision of Mel Brooks. Everybody jump the queen.
Yeah. Well, no. This is far more. This is Canada, remember?
Oh, that's right.
And everybody running it they tend to be of the female gender, and there will be no jumping the queen.
Maybe jumping the king.
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. There you go.
I think things will be far more socially acceptable for a family event.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's what it's.
But yes, you're right. All right. Anybody else have anything else to say, or want to promote? You want to give a shout out? Anything like that?
No? I don't have anything. You guys have been great. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the Cormier installment. And Eric, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And we will set a time up to roll up my Dwarven Wizard.
I look forward to it.
And thank you. It was great to hear you guys again and hang out, even if just over the internet.
Ed makes a good point here, guys. I want you to listen to this particular part. If you see an upcoming announcement about who we're having on and you vibe well with this person, you've got some great questions, you've got some things that you could spin off with as well, let us know. We'll have you back for another installment as a guest on that show as well. So don't think that this is a one-shot. If you guys want to come back and be involved in other authors and other sessions with us, absolutely let us know.
Well, Corey, you have to realize that Eric has been my Gen Con roommate for, God, at least, I think it's 8 years running now.
Okay, you guys are sick of each other, I get it.
Yeah,
no,
we
it's not.
together. I mean, not in the same bed.
No, it's not. It's not that we're sick of each other. It's that we've had a lot of conversations about the realms and where we'd like to see them go, and our plans if we could ever get our grubby hands on control of the realms and that kind of stuff. And we could literally talk for months about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's true.
And
I know that next time, when Brian, just so you know, during your interview, when we get to it next month, George will be here as well as Eric Boyd.
That's wonderful because George and I have worked on some things behind some of the behind the scenes stuff for the realms that have kept the roof from coming in.
Right. Oh yeah. No. That's true.
Ed will tell you about some of those things one day.
Yeah.
We work. George and I are some of the background guys, and so George and I have a great working relationship. And Eric certainly has sung George's praises enough. I don't have to do that, but he and I will riff quite a bit about particular things, and some of the things that made it into the 1490s realms, particularly in Cormier, grew out of conversations that George and I had 10, 15 years ago. So I'm happy to have him. But you don't want Eric and I to just start talking about stuff because
Why not?
You'll never get a podcast done. We're already coming up on 3 hours.
Yes.
They usually run 4.5.
Oh yeah, this is standard Friday for our podcast sessions. We have episodes. It's totally cool.
This is nothing compared. Thanks again, everybody, for coming on. We really do appreciate, Kerr and I both do appreciate you guys coming in. And we should, I'm going to try to get a t-shirt for you guys, too.
Thanks.
So we're going to have one for you for the, I'll bring it to Gen Con. And have one for you guys, too, because y'all are such an important part of realms that there wouldn't be a realm without you guys.
Oh, I wouldn't go nearly that far for me.
No, I really would, because
Brian's real humble.
No,
I know that part.
I know he is, but Eric, you're not. Go ahead and say it. No. But if you think, the love that you have for this setting is so obvious, and it shows in your discussions, in your willingness to jump up and defend it, and defend Ed, and defend everything that's happened here. That it's just incredible, and I really appreciate both you guys for being that way. Because I have a love of the realms. I know Curry does. I introduced Curry to Dungeons and Dragons when he was how old were you, Curry? Like 15, 12?
No, first game was 11 years old, and on a personal note, the novels, the storyline, in some very significant way, changed and saved my life, and that's part of my story. I'll take that with me forever.
No, that's true. It did. So you see, it is important that you guys continue to do what you're doing, and it truly saves people's lives. It really does, believe it or not. So don't be humble. Be grateful that you're a part of this. You have a love for it. So that's what I have to say. I'm done.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
No, thank you, and thank you again, Eric. Appreciate it. So
You are very welcome. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Anytime. I enjoy our time together. We've known each other for a long time. You too, Brian. I remember meeting you on the floor of in Gen Con at the in the room with all the what do you call them, the vendors room, and I think you were working at Sean Reynolds' booth, weren't you?
I believe so.
Yep, you were.
Those many years ago.
All those many years ago. That's when he was selling soap from his girlfriend and all that too. So.
I remember those soaps.
You remember? I bought one, and I remember using it, and I couldn't wait to get home, and I washed myself vigorously until I got it where I could get the dice out of it. Well, everybody say goodbye, Gracie. Thank you again.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. There you go. You're the one that did it. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode of Interview with the Old Mage with Ed Greenwood. Our next one will be July 5th that we're recording, and it'll be Brian Cortijo, Eric Boyd, and George Crashos, along with Ed, Curry, and myself. We hope to hear from you before then, so send in your questions, please, to fansofedgreenwood@gmail.com, and we'll be able to put them on air and to have them asked to the group. Until then, keep playing in the realms.